The Thomasville Rose Show started in the early 1920s. The small beginnings of a small flower show is now a big tradition in our community. Ephraim Rotter from the History Museum talks about the Rose Show and Thomasville's relationship to this flower.
One of the most frequent questions I get asked as curator of the Historical Society is, what's up with Thomasville and roses? Why is Thomasville the Rose City? Why is there a rose show here? And truth is, there's not a lot of great answers to the genesis of that, but I can say that in the late 1880s is the first time that Thomasville referred to itself as the Rose City, or at least someone referred to Thomasville as the Rose City. Now, by the late 19-teens, early 1920s, there was a nursery owner here in Thomasville, the Hjort family, and the Hjorts grew roses. And they were friends with a woman named Lilla Forrest Knapp. And together with her, she'd won a $25 prize at a festival where there was a prize given out for the best vegetables. And they got together and decided that they were gonna have a show for the best roses grown here in Thomasville. It was held on the second floor of Neal's department store over on Broad Street. And that's where the first rose show was in 1922. For the first several years of it, it stayed at stores. The second year, it was at a Pontiac dealership here in Thomasville. And it would move around from stores to store, mostly remaining small and local. The expansion of the displays and the participation of many of the plantation owners south of Thomasville certainly helped to expand the franchise, because these were a lot of power and industry brokers that were coming in, spending their winters here in Thomasville from all over the country. And their participation in the Rose Show made it interesting to their friends from other places, and that played a huge role in making the Rose Show not just a local event, but making it an event at one point during the starting in the 40s and the 50s, where it would be on the front page of the Atlanta Constitution and Journal, where it was statewide interest, even national interest, where the best rose growers really wanted their rose to win the annual Thomasville Rose Show.
Paul Hjort and his family know all about roses. They owned a nursery that had a rose test garden. Paul still helps out with the Rose Show and shares some early memories from his childhood.
Well, I remember some of the first rose shows was out at the old airfield hangar. It was a metal building, and they would bring in loads and loads of pine shavings or sawdust and wet it down to try to cool down that metal buildings, move all the local airplanes out at the time, and just had that. That was the beginning that I remember about rose shows, was at the old airfield. But the smell of roses was everywhere, because at the time most of the roses exhibited were either the old-fashioned varieties of roses or some of the newer hybrid teas, which still had some fragrance to them. Unfortunately, so many of the new hybrid teas, and particularly good exhibition roses, do not have the odor that the older roses had, and they smell like roses. The whole building smelled good, between the pine shavings and the roses. It was wonderful. Yeah. At the time, several of the plantations put in exhibits, quite large exhibits, and you may find from some of the folks around here, like Tom Hill, really a historian here in Thomasville, pictures of the horse made out of roses and other things made out of roses.
Ruth Willett has a long connection to the Rose Show and the festivities that follow later. She too recounts her memories of the show at Vose Field.
And it was like a fairyland, because they had cut down pine trees, I mean literally 12-foot pine trees, and put in the hangar all around the outside, and they had sawdust on the floor and roses everywhere, and it just smelled good and looked good. But every plantation had some kind of exhibit, and some of them were just fantastic, with waterfalls and the flowers, on them, and just their imagination went wild on some of them.
Right after World War II, the Rose Show was moved to the high school, which is now McIntyre Park Middle School. Ruth Willett was in high school then.
In 1946, they came to Thomasville to highlight the Rose Show, the Atlanta Journal magazine people. And when they came, they got some of us from the high school to come and pose for them. And they wanted to do a queen, and they just sort of randomly picked me. So that's why I have the unofficial title of the first Rose Queen. And a lot of people say when they come to town that they've heard that I was the first Rose Queen. But that was Atlanta Journal's definition.
In the late 1940s, the Rose Show expanded to other events. Some of these events are still around today.
The franchise of the Rose Show began to expand into the Rose Festival. 1948 was the first year of the parade and the Rose Queen. Behind me is the gown of Doris Goddard, Thomasville's first Rose Queen. And the franchise began to expand even more after that. There was a Rose Show ball, there was a street dance after the parade, and eventually there began to be things like the Rosebud Parade for the children. Some things that were added to the franchise didn't stick around very long, like for a 5 or 10 year run where there was a clown contest before the parades.
Other events that are not part of the festivities today are the Rose Show Ball, Miss Deep South, the aquatic shows, the horse shows, and a religious service.
One of the big things in the history of the Rose Festival may have been moving it back downtown. For a while, the show was held over at the time it was the Veterans Administration Domiciliary, which later became Southwestern State Hospital. They held it out over at the fairgrounds, but bringing it back downtown really helped to integrate it more into the business of Thomasville and helped to bring visitors downtown. The Rose Show through the years has become so tightly and closely affiliated with Thomasville that it has had a large role in maybe not people from Thomasville's understanding, but people from outside of Thomasville will most likely ask that question, is that the place where there's the Rose Show? And so Thomasville's reputation as the city of roses and as the location of this well-known festival has really gone a long way towards people even knowing about Thomasville, and without question, it's had a significant economic impact, but also a cultural impact in knowing Thomasville is a place that doesn't just appreciate beauty and nature, but as a place that is a popular resort area that it's nice to go to and that has an appreciation for its surroundings.
In a sense, it's fitting that we really don't know the beginnings of Thomasville's relationship with roses. No one can really own that relationship in a sense. It belongs to us all. As we look in the past, we can see what roses bring to us now, an appreciation for beauty. Enjoy the Rose Show. I'm Austin Reams for Thomasville Today.